Let me start with this. Customers are willing to pay 41% higher fees when they work with a financial advisor they trust more than a financial advisor they trust less. That's trust premium. Last week, I received the first results from my first group of panel surveys, which I used to assess the trust premium of financial advisors this time. I chose financial advisors as the first group simply because, well, I have a friend who's a financial advisor. Actually, a few. In this episode, I will explain how the survey took place, some of the results from the study, and explain what's next. A survey like this has never been done before, and the results are groundbreaking. I'm really excited about the work that I'm doing on researching and affecting the trust premium for salespeople, service providers, and professionals in any industry. I have to admit that given my new research, I was tempted to change the name of this podcast to the Trust Premium Show, but I won't. My focus remains on trust in general, inside and out. My trust premium work is the outside of trust, but I continue my work on the inside of trust as well, inside organizations, inside relationships, in being trusted, building trust, and knowing who to trust. But today, I'll talk about the trust premium research and specifically for financial advisors. Right after this. Welcome to The Trust Show. I'm Yoram Solomon, your host, the author of the Book of Trust, and facilitator of the Trust Habits Workshop. My mission is simple. I want to help you form habits that build your trustworthiness, because the answer to this question will have the biggest impact on your personal and professional success or failure. Can I trust you? Let me start by telling you about the methodology that I used in this study. You know, every good research starts with, how did you do it? What was the plan? And so I'll start with that. I developed a survey that had 86 questions. Now, it's important to know that I didn't just develop the survey and that was it. I talked to people that used financial advisors, and I started asking them questions along the different components of my relative trust model as it relates to financial advisors, along their personal context, along the industry context. And I asked them questions, and I wanted to see several things. One of them was whether the questions make sense, whether they're easy to understand. Even when I was done writing those questions, I took it to several people to try and see if they still understood it and that there are no issues. And that's called the pilot study. So I didn't consider the outputs from those I'm not going to call them surveys. They were more kind of interviews using a survey as the platform. But it was a pilot study to finalize what the actual survey is going to be. So the survey has 86 questions. And one thing that I acknowledged is that different industries behave differently. And, about 5 years ago when I did my initial, I'm not going to call that a study. It was really kind of a survey when I tried to understand in the context of a home remodeling project costing about $10,000. I tried to assess that trust premium. And the trust premium I had back then was about 29.6%. But I realized that different industries behave differently, and so I decided to choose one industry. I started with financial advisors. I mean, I could have started with anything else, but I started with financial advisors. Now, I would obviously disqualify participants who are not planning or not currently using a financial advisor. So the first question was actually a qualification question. Are you using? Have you been using, are you considering using a financial advisor? If the answer is no, then obviously that's not somebody I want to ask. So I got a total of 223 responses. 116 were disqualified by sentiment. And I should state that after interviewing multiple panel companies, I found that I had the best alignment and they met my needs the most. A company called Sentiment, starting with a C. So the word sentiment, but starts with a C. And they disqualified 116 of the 223 for several reasons. One of them is because they're not using, that was the qualification question. Another one was age and gender distribution. So they wanted to make sure that we have enough age and gender distribution. And so at some point, as they were collecting their input, they were checking to see that we have enough of a certain gender, enough of a certain age. So we're down to 107, and the reason 107 was because 7 were disqualified by me, and that left us with 100 qualified responses. And I'll talk more about why I disqualified the 7. One question was built by them actually to check the attention. So at some point, I was just asking them to check a specific answer, a specific one of the 4 or 5 possible answers, to check a specific one to see if they're paying attention and they're not just going, straight. Those panelists are people that they used before, that they qualified over multiple surveys. They are getting paid for it. I don't know who they are. The Sentiment, probably, I'm not even sure that they know for sure who they are, but those are people that continuously field surveys and had no issues with previous researchers like me. I even inserted 2 jokes as mental breaks because, after all, going through 86 questions, it took, on average, I looked at the time that it took to fill the surveys. On average, it took about 10 minutes. Some took less, some took more. But, when it takes 10 minutes, even when it takes 10 minutes, it makes sense to kind of insert. So I inserted 2 politically correct jokes so nobody would get offended by anything. But it was kind of mental breaks to keep them engaged. There are several sections in this survey. So the 86 questions were split among, the first question was obviously the qualification question. Are you considering using a financial advisor? 2 of the demographic, of the overall 9 demographic questions, 2 of them were up there at the front. Those are the age and gender to get better distribution, as I said. Then there were 32 questions about financial advisor trustworthiness. So those are the different components of my relative trust model. And it's just that I'm assuming that across industries, even the same components of my relative trust model would have different weights and different importance levels in different industries. So I wanted to know, what do they consider? And I'll go through the details a little later in this episode. But how important or how each one of those components and the items within those components would affect my decision to use one versus the other, my decision to trust one over the other. Then there were 5 questions along transferability. And transferability, that's trust law number 5, that trust is transferable. If I trust you and you trust somebody else, that I will trust that somebody else. So things like, do I rely on reviews, online reviews by people I don't know? Do I rely on personal recommendations? Do I rely on references that the financial advisor or whoever that would be gave me? 4 questions about financial advisor context. So this is a context of their specific work. 5 questions about the premium, to calculate the premium, and I'll get to that. Actually, that's the next section in this episode. 3 questions about your willingness to recommend. That's kind of in the future. 8 questions about your personal context. So, for example, do you consider yourself to be financially in good shape or not, and so on? How does that affect your decision? And that, even though we're talking about financial advisors, that would be a question, for example, that would apply to any business because a lot of our financial decisions or our willingness to pay a premium depends on how do we consider our own financial situation. Then 8 questions about trustfulness. So remember that the level of trust that I have in a financial advisor is the product of their trustworthiness, but also my trustfulness, my willingness to trust others. And that is important to determine whether or how much do I trust them. 7 questions about the industry context. 6 questions about the consequences and the severity of the consequences to me. Because that would affect how important is trustworthiness. So, for example, and I gave that example 2 weeks ago, if I'm hiring a headshot photographer, the consequences are, if they did a bad job, the consequences are I have to hire somebody again. I lost the money, I lost the time, but that's it. It's not a lot of money, it's not a lot of time. But the consequences of making the wrong decision by hiring a wedding photographer, well, those are more significant because, let's face it, we're not going to get married again. So 6 questions about consequences. More demographics at the end. I typically don't like to put demographics at the front. I found that it's better to put it at the end. So a total of 9 questions, 9 demographic questions. 7 of them are at the end, 2 at the front. Those are the age and gender for better distribution. And then I added a question about how do you feel today? I don't know that that's going to be relevant, but I'm going to see correlation. And as I mentioned, I disqualified 7 of the surveys myself. And I'll actually talk about that in the next section. So let's talk about the trust premium and how did I reach that 41.0%. I typically go 1 digit after the decimal point. So how did I calculate it? I did something very similar to what I did 5 years ago in 2018 with that remodeling project that gave me the 29.6%. So I asked this question. Consider 2 financial advisors, one that you trust and one that you don't. But I made it clear that the one that you don't is really an average. So it's not that you distrust them. It's not that you have a reason to not trust them. It's just that you trust one over the other. That's it. That's as simple as that. And I did make it clear that there is nothing there that would cause you to absolutely not distrust them. And the reason is because I believe that then the premium is going to be, unlimited, simply because, one of them you're never going to do business with, period. Then the first question was, if the price was the same, if they both asked for the same price, which one would you choose? A, the trustworthy one, not sure, A or B, B, the cheaper one, the average one, or none of them. Then I asked if the price was 10% higher. Which one would you choose? Again, same options. Next question, if the price was 20% higher, same options, 50% higher. In 2018, I did not put in 100%. This time I decided to add 100%. And I'll tell you one thing, I'm glad that I did. So when the price was identical, 90 out of 100 chose A, the trustworthy one. 10 said that they're not sure between them, which I interpret as trustworthiness is not as big a factor for them as it was for others. And, when I get to analyze the correlation between different factors, I will try and see what was unique about those 10 to whom trustworthiness was not the most important part, and there's something else, and they're not sure. Then I disqualified 7. So I disqualified 7 based on their answer to this question, to what happens when the price was identical. So first of all, I disqualified those who throughout the entire survey said, we have a preference for A, but then said, we're choosing B, because that just does not make sense. And if that doesn't make sense, then I can't rely on the answers to the other questions that they gave, which is too bad. But in a couple of cases, what I saw was that somebody was just filling straight the same answer to all questions. So, you will have things like that. And so this is why the bigger the sample, the more reliable and credible the sample is. the more you can trust or rely on the results. Then I disqualified those who indicated an intent to hire. We want to hire, but then they chose, we're not choosing any one of them when the price is identical. So the price is identical. I'm not choosing any one of them. Not that I'm not sure, but I'm just not choosing any one of them. To me means that, either you just pick that answer or you don't have an intention. This is not something you think about right now, which is fine, but not appropriate for our survey. So this is how we started out of 107 and we were down to 100. 90 who said to the question, same price. 90 said we're choosing A, the trustworthy one. 10 said not sure, which means trustworthiness is not the most important factor. And there are other factors that we didn't talk about. And they're not price because the price is identical. Then I asked about what if the trustworthy one asked for 10% more. 77 out of 100 were willing to pay 10% more. 14 were not sure between A and B. 8 preferred the price, the cheaper one, B. And 1 decided I'm not hiring anyone. So trustworthiness is important to me as long as the price is the same. But if the price is not the same, then I'm not hiring anyone. I'm not hiring somebody who I don't trust enough, and I'm not hiring somebody who's charging 10% higher. So to give you a sense, what I do with that is 77% were willing to pay 10% higher. So that's really a 7.7% premium. Half of the 14% who said were not sure between them, half of them would be A and half of them would be B. So I gave another half of the 14% of the 10% premium, which really gave me a 0.7% premium. So there's not a lot of impact. And that's how I calculated the premium. So I got 8.4% premium just for that from that question. 50 were willing to pay 20% more, which is another 10% higher. 28 were split between them. So again, I'm considering half. So that adds another 6.4% premium. So on, so forth. So here's an interesting thing. 22% were willing to pay 100% higher price. That's high. I did not expect at 100% higher price, at double the price, I did not expect to have 22% saying I'm still hiring the trustworthy one. So I could have asked for more. So how about 120% and so on, which would mean that the answer, the overall premium, once everything is added up, will actually be higher than 41%. But I didn't go higher than 100%, and I'm not going to go higher than 100% with any of the future surveys I'm going to do. Now, I want to say a few words about something that's called the error margin. Obviously, I'm asking people, it's a sample. Sentiment, again with a C, they have a calculator on their website, which is really very easy to use. There is a formula that considered several factors. 1 is the size of the population overall. 2 is the size of the sample. 3 is the confidence level that I want to achieve. And then you get to the error margin. What is the error margin, or how erroneous can your answers be? Again, this is statistically. So I chose a confidence level of 95%. And to explain again what confidence level is, I'm using their words. The probability that your sample accurately represents the opinions of your population, the industry standard is 95%. By the way, I even checked it with 99%. I'll tell you in a minute. Something to know is that when the population size goes beyond 1,600, for a sample of 100, it doesn't matter. And the population, obviously, the overall population is huge. I mean, hundreds of millions, right? People. So it doesn't matter once you go above 1,600. So I took a sample of 100. With 100 surveys, you get 10% error margin. So essentially, the answer to every question could be plus minus 10% to stay within 95% probability that the sample accurately represents the opinion of your population. I know that this sounds a lot of math and all, but it still means that the results are pretty robust. By the way, if I chose a 99% confidence level, which is the highest you ever choose, then the error margin would have been 13%, plus minus 13%. In general, it's better to be between 2% and 7%. And I looked at the numbers. 2% would require a sample of just about 1,500 people, 1,600 people. And 7%, which would be on the worst side, would require about 175. Now, I can do 175, but the thing is, I'm going to do multiple groups. As soon as I hit the next group with another 100 samples, I'm already past 200. I'm already past the 7%. And then it goes on from there, the next 100, the next 100, the next 100. By the time I have my 15th survey, I'm going to be at the 2% error. So the error margin. So it's going to be whatever the number is plus minus 2%. Let me talk about the different parts of the survey. So there was a part, as I said, I think it had 32 questions. Financial advisor trustworthiness. So the different components of my relative trust model broken into multiple items per each one of them. And the questions were like that. If financial advisor A was X, whatever this feature or this behavior was, like, for example, they were certified, okay? Or they know what they're doing, the quality of their presentation. So things that address the first component, which was competence. So I'm showing that if financial advisor A was one of the items of competence and B was not, and obviously all the features were positive features because I wanted the consistency of how I look at the results. And the 5 options I gave were: 1, this will not affect my decision to hire A over B, or I'm a little more likely to hire A over B, or I'm more likely to hire A than B, or I'm much more likely to hire A than B, or I will definitely hire A over B. So I gave different levels, anywhere from it's not going to affect, and because it's all positive, then it's all likelihood of hiring A over B and not B over A, because it doesn't make sense. If you're telling them that one of them is more competent than the other, I mean, the worst that can happen is they're going to say it's not going to affect. They're not going to say, well, I'm going to hire the second one because the first one is more competent. That just doesn't make sense. So I gave them 5 different levels between it's not going to affect my decision to hire A over B, all the way to I will definitely hire A over B. So all had that range between no preference and 5. I'm still analyzing the results, but I can tell you one thing, and that is the 2 strongest components of my relative trust model that affected the decision to hire one over the other are no BS and empathy. Both of them are the subcomponents of positivity. They're stronger than all the others. Again, not sharing the results specifically yet. I will do that when I write an article, and then I continue to do the survey, the research, because I still want to do some correlation. So the 2 strongest ones in trustworthiness overall, out of 32, out of the 6 components, main components, is positivity, or the 2 subcomponents of positivity. The fact that the financial advisors does not BS you and that they care about you, empathy. The next part in the survey was really the trust premium, the calculation of the trust premium. But after that, I asked questions about other factors outside of the trustworthiness of the financial advisor. By the way, I should add that within those 32 components, I also included the transferability. How does that affect the decision, and the specific financial advisor context? Like, for example, one of them is, how does the fact that he or she own their own company and have a stake in the company, how does that affect your decision to choose one versus the other when the other is not? The other is just an employee there. So the next section was other factors, and those included personal context. They included trustfulness. So this is the survey taker, the customer. How do they consider trustfulness? So one question is people are generally trusted. You think that everybody there put the highest score on that? No, they didn't. So trustfulness, I looked at trust in general, my willingness to trust in general, my willingness to trust financial advisors. So this is still trustfulness because it's not a specific financial advisor, but just how do people see this profession? Do they see people who practice this profession as trusted in general? Maybe one of the next ones should be used car salesman. And it would, at some point it would be. But and by the way, just so that you know, the car salesman that I trust the most is actually a used car salesman, not in general, a very specific one. I don't know that I have a high trust in used car salespeople in general, but I have high trust in one of them. Then I asked about industry context. So this is kind of how does the respondent see different things. And I gave a 7-point scale that goes all the way from strongly disagree to strongly agree. So it's strongly disagree, generally disagree, somewhat disagree, neutral, somewhat agrees, generally agree, and strongly agree. So those would be questions. I'm actually looking at the results right now as I'm talking to you. For example, to what degree do you agree or disagree with the following statement? If I hire the wrong financial advisor, there will be significant negative consequences to me. So that's part of that's another one of the components that I mentioned before, the consequences to me. So I just this is my perspective. This is not how I decide to hire A over B, but this is how I look at things, such as, for example, the significance of the consequences of choosing the wrong financial advisor. I'm going to take these and correlate them to other factors, to other things, to the premium itself, and see how they, for example, affect the premium. So I'm going to be looking at the premium and then see how the different factors affect the premium. What this will do is several things. Within an industry, it would actually allow me and whoever my customers for that are going to be, in this case, financial advisors, it would allow us to know that there are certain customers that give a higher premium, and this is what describes them. These are their demographics. And the second thing is it would allow me to see how things change across different industries. The last section was, again, demographics. This time I focused on age, gender. Well, age and gender were up at the front for better distribution. But then I asked about marital status, number of dependents, education level, employment status, annual household income. I categorized them, by the way, a little differently than what typically, the way you typically see those. Gender, not so much, but for example, age. And I changed the groups to ages where certain things happen. The age when you are in college, right after college, you're on your own, an age that you're more likely to be married, an age you're more likely to have kids, and so on, an age in which you're getting retirement payments, and so on. So, Education level is pretty straightforward. Employment status, annual household income. Again, I distributed a little differently than others, kind of putting this in the percentile categories of income here at the U.S. I also added another question that was more on the financial situation, but it's not, I asked about household income, but if you're making $180,000, are you rich a year? Are you rich, or your household is making it? If you're making $250,000, are you rich? And the answer is, well, it depends on where you are in the U.S., in California, it takes a lot more money to get to the same quality of living than it does in Texas and in other places. So I decided to add a personal perspective and actually ask, how do you consider your own financial situation? Are you barely making it? Are you staying above water? I managed to put money into savings. I'm doing just fine. I have more than I need. So I gave those options. And then the last one, I'm not even sure why I added that. And that was multiple choices. You could choose as many as you'd like. How do you feel today? And I put a variety of emotions. At some point, I'm going to try and correlate that. I collected a lot of information to be able to later analyze and see relationships that maybe we never thought about. So I kind of erred on the side of adding more questions, taking the risk that more questions would potentially cause survey takers to maybe not be as serious as before, but it's still manageable. 86 questions is still manageable. So this is it. This is the end of this episode. Let's summarize it. First of all, financial advisors can make 41% higher fees if their customers trust them more than the alternative. And this is important. You can make 41% higher fees. By the way, and you get what was it? It was 95% that you get the business if you charge the same price. And that's important as well. For the financial advisors here who are listening, here's what's in it for you. My next step is to assess if I start working with financial advisors, the next step is that we now assess the trustworthiness, your trustworthiness or your employees' trustworthiness with your clients. It will tell you what the trust premium you may be able to charge is to get new clients and to keep the current clients that you have. It will even tell you how likely you are to lose customers for a cheaper alternative. Because the lower the trustworthiness is, the lower the premium is, the trust premium is, which means that it's easier for somebody else. The discount somebody else has to offer is smaller for them to take away your customer. It will tell you how likely you are to lose customers to a more trusted alternative. Because if you don't rank or your people don't rank high on trustworthiness, it's going to be easier for somebody who ranks higher to take away customers. But eventually, it will tell you how you or your people rank in your trustworthiness in the eyes of your customers, and therefore what is the trust premium and your customer retention can be. And at the end, really, my goal is to build a customized training program for you to increase the trustworthiness, to increase the trust premium, to increase the probability of getting new customers, getting higher fees, and not losing customers. As far as the study itself, first I will now start analyzing correlation, relationships between personal, industry, context, consequences, and so on, and the trust premium. What personal and industry context affected the willingness to pay the trust premium, because in different industries, it's going to be different context elements, as well as the importance of the different trustworthiness component, or in other words, how different components of the relative trust model are affecting trustworthiness in a specific industry. I will continue to do that with different industries to get better variability and better calculate the correlation, because obviously in a certain industry, certain parameters are going to be very similar and it's going to be hard to see how they affect the trust premium. But as I start getting different industries where those parameters and variables are different, then I can start to see the correlation as they affect the trust premium differently. Okay, I'm done. Bottom line, I am amazed at the results. I'm really excited of this project and the implications that it has. It's the first time somebody has done something like this. So I mean, hopefully you can sense from my voice how excited I am. Well, that's it for today. May trust be with you. This is The Trust Show. What would you like to know about trust and trustworthiness? Let me know and I'll answer it in a future episode. I would love to hear from you. Email me at yoram@thetrustshow.com. If you like this episode, subscribe to the show so you will automatically get notified when I release a new episode. Rate it. Write a review for this podcast because those ratings help not only you, but also others looking for podcasts just like this. If you're looking for more resources to learn about how to build trust, be trusted, or know who to trust, look up my workshops, online courses, books, or go to my website, trusthabits.com. And remember that the answer to these two questions will have the biggest impact on your personal and professional success or failure. Can I trust you? And can you trust me? Thank you for listening or watching The Trust Show.